Hi, welcome back to Christine's Home Affairs. I did a quick video a couple of weeks ago showing you how to do different variations with zips in your bags. And I did mention in there that if anyone wanted to know how to do the Butler method, that I would do the video. So I've had quite a few requests. The Butler method for putting zips in bags was created by Amy Butler some years back, and I'll pop a link to her YouTube channel in the description box below so you can see how she does it. I'm going to do this just slightly differently in my own way, as we usually do. So come along and I'll show you how to make this quick zippered pouch using the Amy Butler method for inserting the zips. This is everything that we're going to need. I've got a back and a front piece of fabric that is 13 inches by 7.5 inches, and then I've got two lining pieces that are also 7.5 inches by 13 inches. I have a scrap of fabric that is about 3 inches long by the width of the zip. That's for the zipper tab. And then I have another scrap of fabric for the side tabs that is 2.25 inches wide by about 5 inches long, and this will make 2 tabs. We need to use double-sided tape for our bag today, and if you don't have hemostats, which I don't, you can either use tweezers, an awl, or even your seam ripper, the point of your seam ripper, and you need a pen, to mark your fabric. If you're sewing to sell, then you'll want to have put your label on already, so I've put mine on the center front of my bag. And let's get started here. And the zip we need is 35 centimeters or 14 inches. I'm intentionally using one that is longer than the bag. I can cut that down. This way I don't have to think about what measurements I need. The first thing I'm going to do is cut off the metal bar on the end of my zip. And I'm only cutting off the end of the zip that closes, not the end where the slider is. Once you've cut the end off, take your tab for the zip. This is the right side up, that's the wrong side. Fold it in half with the right side facing up or facing together, and place the end of the tab inside that folded fabric. So we've got the right side showing. Place the fabric into the tab like that, and I'm going to take this to the machine and just quickly sew the tab in place at the end there. I'll be right back. So there's my tab stitched onto the finished end of my zip. All you need to do is just fold out the fabric and push those edges out, and you've got the raw edges pointing to the end and sitting out on the sides as well. They're all going to be enclosed in the lining shortly, but by doing your tabs this way, it reduces the amount of bulk that you have in your fabric. So our zip is ready. It's still too long for the bag, but I do actually want that to have some extra length. I'll cut that shortly. Next, what we're going to do is place some double-sided tape onto all of our pieces of fabric. If you've got a directional fabric, then you just need to keep that in mind. So I will flip this bag. These are the same directions. I'm going to flip this piece around that way because the bag will end up sitting like that. Normally, zips open from left to right. So when we put our double-sided tape down, we're going to start at the right-hand corner on the front piece and come up to within 3/4 inch from the side edge. Now that's assuming you've got a 1/4 inch seam allowance. If your seam allowance is going to be 1/2 inch, then finish your tape 1 inch from the end. My bag today is going to have a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and my zip will need to stop at 1/2 inch further on from that. So that is 3/4 inch. I'm going to make a mark right on the very edge of the two pieces of fabric here. So you can see a chalk line right there, and on this one here as well. That's where I want to stop with my double-sided tape. So I've placed my tape down and I've just ended it inside that yellow line here and on the other side as well. For the back and the front of the bag, we actually want to have our tape on opposite sides of each other. So we start from the left to the right and the right to the left. And you can see that when you have the bag laid out the way it's going to look when it's finished, we're starting at the same end. We'll do the same for our lining. I've marked a line on the lining where I want to stop with my tape. I now have all my fabric ready for the zip to be inserted. We'll set the back pieces aside for the time being. Take your zip, and the end that's got the tab on it will go to the end that has the tape all the way across. Place the zip with the bumpy side faced down and the tab lined up along the top edge. So the raw edge of the tabs will face outward. Before I go any further, on the wrong side of the front piece of fabric, you also want to make a mark at 3/4 of an inch. That's where you'll stop sewing. And you'll do the same thing on the lining. Where that line is there is where I'm going to end with my needle. So by having the zip a little bit longer than the finished bag at this stage is going to make it easier to sew it in place. You don't have to move the slide out of the way. Take the lining piece that is going to match up with your front. So you want right sides facing. So this one here will face down like that. And we've got the tape that finishes 3/4 of an inch from the end, just like the front piece. I'll peel this tape off, and what we're going to do is line up the left side edge. So make sure this side here is straight. Anything else can be trimmed back later, and tape that down. And this double-sided tape is really good, that if you make a mistake you can actually easily lift it off and reposition it. So I want to make sure this line here, this finished stitching line here, corresponds with that finished stitching line just there. The fabric lines up nicely on the left side edge, and once that's lined up properly I can press all the fabric in place. Now we'll go to the machine, and we're going to start from the end that's got the tab. We're going to finish at the end with where the zip slider is. So you'll want to take it to the machine and have the lining faced down. We'll sew from this end here, come down, and we will stop exactly on that drawn line. Okay, back stitch at the beginning, sew all the way until that drawn line, and then back stitch. I've finished at that drawn line with my needle in the down position. Now I'm going to back stitch a few stitches and stop at that drawn line again. Then I'm going to open my zip, keep the needle down, and this is where your hemostats will come in handy if you have them. I don't. So I'm going to take this excess bit of zip, raise my foot and move my tape out of the way, and then I'm going to sew over it to the end. I'll raise my foot, then I'll raise my foot, and I'm going to come back to the other side of that yellow line. Whilst this zipper tape is out of the way, I'll go back over that and stitch it in place again. Back stitch a couple of times, and that's finished. In Amy's video, when she does the top stitching, she doesn't top stitch all the layers together, and it's not something that I generally do, but I'm going to give it a go this time and see how it works. I'm so used to top stitching all of the layers together that it's kind of messing with my head. But what we're going to do is take the edge of the fabric here, and we want that to be sewn onto the main part of the front of the bag. So we're going to top stitch just the top layer. Apparently that makes it a little bit easier when you're doing the ends of your bags, but I find that I don't have a problem because there's not much bulk in my zipper tabs anyway. But I'm going to do this and see how it looks at the end. I've got the edge of my fabric facing the underside of my main fabric. and I'll top stitch that in place. Move your zip out of the way. So what we have now is a zip that comes along and then curves in between the lining and the main fabric. And that eliminates the need for creating another side tab on the end of your bag. It is a really nice finish. Now we need to attach the next one. Take the back fabric piece, and we're now going to line up the other side of our bag. When we started, we lined up the left-hand side. We're going to bring these two faces together. So we're going to line up the right-hand side, because it's important to make sure that the curve that we've got on our zip end here matches up on both sides of the bag. And the end where we've got the 3/4 inch marking, I've made the same marking on the back of that so that I know where to stop and I can line up the back and front pieces. We'll place the right sides together and we're going to line up the right sides. And that drawn line that I've got here, I want those two to line up evenly. And if you like, you can carry that along to your zipper tape. It'll help you line it up. And we're going to take the tape, and that marking is going to line up with the marking that I'd made earlier. So I've got my zipper tape in place. The markings line up on the edge there, and it also lines up on the back and front pieces. We'll take our lining piece and we're going to do the same thing. So this end here has no tape on it. I'll bring that around, have the right sides facing, and we're going to line up from the right side again, and I'll line up my 3/4 inch mark with the 3/4 inch mark on my zipper tape and my fabric, and double check that all those markings match up. Then I can secure the fabric in place. And just double check that you've got all the side edges lined up properly, that your markings that you've made have matched up as well. Now we'll go back to the machine. We're going to sew from the tab end again. So this time our lining will be faced up. We're going to sew with a back stitch and come all the way to that drawn line and stop with the needle down. We'll do exactly the same thing that we did with the other side of the zip. And away we go again. As you come up to the zip slider, you'll just want to raise your foot, move that slider out of the way and continue on until that line that we've drawn. Back stitch, raise your foot, take your zipper tape, move it out of the way, and sew to the end. Bring your needle up, go back before the tape, and sew over that tab again. And that's it. And before you top stitch that top edge down, you just want to make sure that your zipper tape goes off in the same position on both sides of fabric. And if you're happy with that, then we can go and top stitch just like we did the first side. So I'll move the lining fabric out of the way and I'll top stitch that seam that's underneath toward the front of my fabric. We've got the zip finishing really nicely on the edge there. The lining isn't secured down, but the top is. So that looks really nice like that. So that is the Butler method for inserting a zip. I've done the tabs my own way, but this end here is the way that Amy teaches. Of course, we all do things a little bit differently. I like my zips to be a little bit longer. The only thing I would do differently myself is in the top stitching, because you all know that I like to top stitch all my layers together. And when I top stitch, I'll top stitch from the end of the zipper tab, and I would stop at the end of the zip here. So my top stitching would be in that area. Then that way the side seams don't get too bulky when I'm putting the bag together. But that's just personal choice. So far this is the Butler method for putting in your zip. We can now finish the rest of the bag. It's up to you if you want to do boxed corners or curved corners. This bag is the same size as all those tapestry bags that I've just finished in the last couple of weeks. So I'm just going to do curved corners. So whatever rounded edge you have is what you'll use. I'm not going to cut that fabric. I'm going to use that as my guide for stitching. Take the strip of fabric that you've got for your side tabs and fold that in half lengthwise. Then we'll fold the raw edges in. Take that to the machine, sew down both long edges. I'll go and do that quickly now. So the tab's been stitched down on both sides. You just need to fold it in half and cut it in half. And then we'll fold that one in half and the next one. And if you want to incorporate this into a bag, then you might want to put a D-ring on these as well, or even a swivel clip so that you can attach it to a bag or a handle. Open out your fabric, separate the lining from one side. So we want the bag open and both lining pieces to the back and nothing underneath here. Take your little side tabs and we're going to place it about 1/2 inch from the top edge here. We'll do that on both sides. And you can go and stitch that in place now if you like, but I'm going to do that when I close up the bag. Bring the two right sides together of your main and line up the side edges. Make sure you've got the folds lined up on the top edge there. Go to the other end, we'll line that up as well. You can trim off your tape now too, and then line up the rest of the bag. Okay, we're just about to finish this. We can start on the side seam, so all the way around. Where this curved edge is, I'm going to treat that as the edge of my fabric. So my 1/4 inch seam will come around and I'll follow that curved edge with a 1/4 inch seam. Keep going all the way around. I find it easier to cut the curves off later. That way I don't have to worry about messing around, lining things up. Come around all the way to here, backstitch and leave an opening, and we'll backstitch and go around. So we'll backstitch at the beginning. I'll also run over the area where I've put those tabs in a couple of times as well. Okay, the bag has been finished and I've just got the opening here for turning through. I've sewn the corners on the round there, but we need to trim that. So we'll just cut close to the curve. And we can turn the bag the right way around. What you can do before you do that is just take this lining piece, and where the seam is, you can just fold the fabric, finger press that at each end, and then run your thumb along that opening to make a crease so that you can close the bag up after. Do the same on the other side. And then when we go and pinch this closed, it'll have a nice crease for us to close up the bag nice and evenly. Let's turn this the right way around. You know what I've forgotten is to open my zip. You know I'm notorious for that. Fortunately, with the Butler Method, there's a little bit of a gap at the top edge that you can actually get your hand in and push that slider open. Okay, let's turn this through. And once you're happy with your bag, then go to your lining, pinch the edges, push the fold out on the bottom of your bag, pinch the edges so that they're taut, and I will quickly take that to the machine and stitch from here to close up the bag. And there we have our finished bag. So the bag itself is almost identical to the one that I did just a couple of weeks ago in my batch sewing video and also in the individual tutorial. The only thing that's different is this end of the zip. Oh, and the top stitching. So when you close up your bag here, you'll see that all you've got is the tabs that have been stitched into the bag itself, rather than having the zipper tape stitched into the tab and then the tab sewn into the side of the bag. 99% of the time this is a technique that I use on both ends of my bags, but we have done this in the recessed bag tutorial some time back, but it's a really nice, effective technique. I'm not sure about not top stitching. I think that's just because I'm so used to doing top stitching. I do worry about the lining coming up and getting caught in the zip, but I guess if you press that properly, that shouldn't happen. And if you don't like this side edge here, you can actually stitch that down just on the very edge there, and that will hide the lining on the inside of the bag. That is my take on the Butler Method. So there we have it, another finished pouch. One side of the zip is exactly the same as my regular bags as well, where the tabs are concerned. And then we have a different finish on the very edge for the Butler Method. So I do really like this technique. It actually reduces the amount of bulk that you have on one end of your bag. I'm not sure whether I'm going to change and do all of my bags in that way. I might have to do a time trial and see. I think the time it takes you to put a tab on the end of your zip is probably around about the same time that it takes you to do that extra measuring on the side of your bag. So I don't think it's going to make much difference in the overall finished time where productivity is concerned. But it's certainly a really nice, neat way of installing a zip. It's a technique that's quite often used in dressmaking, so you'll see it in jackets. If you ever have the misfortune of replacing a zip in a jacket, you'll see that the top edges of the jacket are done in exactly the same way. So there's lots of garments where you'll see that technique used. Not so much in bag making though. So it is a great little technique. Let me know if you think that I should actually be incorporating that more into my bags. Not sure. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video and I'll catch you next time. Bye for now.